So this publication Mr. Patterson reminds us that we are mistaken if we reflect upon what we think were the good old days of a time when our politics was conducted in a stellar British correct fashion and all was well. Well, Professor Miller in this book disabuses us of any such notion. He outlines that, in fact, the road to electoral reform, which this publication captures, chronicles for us, that the road almost has always been a road marked by and one of a legacy of election rigging, he says, malpractices and violence, from 1843 all the way through. 1843 all the way through. The process had rigging, malpractices, and various degrees of violence. By 67, there was an escalation. By 72, ballot boxes were being stuffed. Stealing was the order of the day, and there was more escalation. By 76, it got even worse. We saw the state of emergency. 77, we got to 77, and we saw where a joint select committee was convened to help us to get past the sorry pass. By 79, as you heard, the Joint Select Committee innovated with support the independent tripartite electoral management system and body that we now have. But by September 79, with the EAC established under the Electoral Reform Interim Act, Professor Miller says at page 70 of his book, with all these improvements, this immense innovation about to get going, he asks, what could possibly go wrong going forward? Well, the book tells us much of the challenge of what happens when you innovate something and then have to make it work. When you have a vision and then have to roll your sleeve up to make the vision become reality, and all the people along the way. Well, amongst those who contributed to this process, who in the electoral process has helped us to think through constitutional reform issues, amongst others, has been the Honorable Bruce Golding, former Prime Minister of Jamaica. Oret Bruce Golding, from an early age, has been involved in Jamaica's political arena, his father being Tertius Golding, who was first elected to the House of Representatives for West St. Catherine in 1949. In 1968, following in his father's footsteps, Bruce Golding was elected vice chairman of the Jamaica Labour Party constituency executive for West St. Catherine and appointed a member of the board of directors for the National Lotteries Commission while he was still attending university. By 69, after completing his studies, at only 21 years old, he was selected as a candidate for West St. Catherine. In the 1990s, we know and recall that Mr. Golding had different views from those he held and the road he walked with the Jamaica Labour Party up to that point. And so under his stewardship came the National Democratic Movement, launched in 1995, where he served as its first president. In September 2002, after intensive negotiations, Mr. Golding re-entered the Jamaica Labour Party. The party went on to contest 2002 general election, and Mr. Golding became Prime Minister eventually of Jamaica on September 11, 2007. And so from many vantage points, Oret Bruce Golding will have seen the path that has had to be trod in the development of the Electoral Office of Jamaica, the Electoral Advisory Committee, and the Electoral Commission. And so, could I ask you to please welcome Mr. Bruce Golding for his remarks.
You know something, Carol would never be asked to introduce the President of the United States. She would never be content to simply say, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. My friends, both Carol and Peter have already referred to it, but one of the things that we can be proud of, you know, we beat up on ourselves so much. We are our worst critics. But one of the things that we can really be proud of is the robust, responsive, transparent, efficient electoral management system that we have with several layers of safeguards. It's not only free and fair in the elections that it produces, but it is so demonstrably so that it commands the trust and confidence of the Jamaican people. Gaining the trust and confidence of the Jamaican people is no easy feat. And you know, this achievement of which we can be so proud comes into sharp relief when we see what is happening in other parts of the world, the United States. I don't know whether their election system is flawed. What I do know is that more than 3 out of every 10 Americans believe that the 2020 presidential elections were stolen. So there's a serious confidence deficit in the system. And there are other countries where that happens. I happen to have been part of an observer mission to Kenya for their presidential election recently, and for days after the elections, we were on pins and needles because their history of accepting election results is not one that is particularly praiseworthy. So we have a lot to be thankful for. Today it is not only hailed in other parts of the world, but it commands respect at home. And you know, the 2 generations of Jamaicans who are under 50 can be forgiven if they take it for granted. They came and found it. Those of us who are in the higher age echelons, those of us who were around, those of us who experienced a long period of flawed voter registration, flawed constituency boundary determination, flawed voting processes, those of us who can recall the mistrust and the controversy that prevailed from one election to the next, we can appreciate where we were and how far we have come. And more importantly, which is what I hope the younger generation can be imbued with, we understand the importance of protecting and preserving it, because we know what was there before. And one of the things that's very significant about it, is that, and I think PJ alluded to it, we didn't have no template to draw on, to adapt. We didn't have any model anywhere that we could say, well, let us lift that up and transplant it here. We had to invent our own solution. We had to concoct our own brew. We had to find something that could work in our political framework and within our culture. And there were many people who doubted that it would ever work. But it did. And there are so many people, I would never attempt to name them. There are so many people who have contributed to that. The members of the Electoral Advisory Committee and its successor, the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, who labored. It wasn't an easy job, I mean, they had to have not just intelligence and common sense and understanding. They had to be patient. Because in seeking to build consensus, and in talking to the PNP and the JLP, who very often were not talking to each other, it wasn't easy. And then as well, which is what I find lacking certainly in America, and perhaps lacking to too great an extent here, is that in the late 70s, the political leadership of the time, principally Michael Manley and Edward Seaga, realized that we were heading into a disaster of no mean proportion. And they had the good sense, the strength of will to say, no, let's stop right here and let us see if we can fix this one. And it has proven to be a model that we have used in some other areas of government. I myself think that that spirit and that approach should be better and more widely applied. We have done it in a number of instances, but I still think that there's more that we can do. Many historians have recorded Jamaica's political journey with all its twists and its turns. What Professor Errol Miller has done in this book is to shine the spotlight on the important role that the electoral system played in that journey, with all its flaws and with its corrections. And it represents a most important contribution to our annals. And there's hardly anyone that would have been more competent to do so than Errol Miller. So keen is his sense of history, his analytical acuity, his perceptiveness to be able to see through the posturing and the pontification and to find out what can be achieved, what is possible, and to set about getting it done. And then in addition to that, he brought to bear his experience and the sterling role that he played as chairman of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica during perhaps its most transformative period, building on the work of his predecessors, Professor Gladstone Mills, Peter John Thwaites, William Chinsey. I was pleased that he allowed me the privilege of reading his manuscript and offering comments, which I hope, even in some small way, were found to be useful. So I do want to join with all of you in extending congratulations to Errol for yet another sterling contribution that this erudite son of our soil has made to the land that we all love so well.